Ever catch yourself listening to some true crime podcast, trying to put the pieces together right alongside the host, thinking maybe you could crack the case too?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive, this one's for you. We're going to step behind the crime scene tape, right into the shoes of a crime journalist.
Really digging into the nitty-gritty of it all, thanks to a listener request, too. And you know what? We've got a real pro to walk us through it. Someone who's been on the crime beat for, well, let's just say a while.
Exactly. Welcome aboard. So glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Okay.
It's a field that definitely gets people's imaginations going.
Oh, for sure.
But, having been in the thick of it myself, I can tell you it's way more than just what you see on those TV shows, the dramatic reenactments and big reveals.
Yeah, for sure. Let's break that down a bit. We've got the RoleCatcher guide right here, and it talks about things like research, attending court hearings, even chasing down leads. So it's definitely not all about flashing cameras and getting your name on the front page, is it?
No, not at all. Think of it more like this. Our job, a crime journalist's job, it's about making those connections for the public, giving some context to what might seem like chaos.
Right.
We're talking about holding the justice system accountable, getting to that why behind the crime, and most importantly, giving a voice to the people who are caught in the middle of it all.
I see what you're saying, yeah. And it makes me think about this one case I covered ages ago, this hit and run that had, the whole city on edge. Cops were totally stumped. But there was this one local journalist, I can't remember their name. Anyway, they were digging through traffic cam footage, just hours of it, and they noticed this, tiny discrepancy in how one car was described. And guess what? It was a detail that everyone else missed, but it just blew the whole case open.
Wow.
Talk about impact, right? That's a journalist making a difference.
See, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
People don't often realize it's that meticulous, detailed work, the observation, the research. That's the core of it. It's about being that quiet, observant presence, connecting the dots that other folks might just glance over.
Right.
But to do that well, you need a good, solid understanding of how the legal system actually operates. It's less about sensationalizing, making a big splash, and way more about informing the public with accurate information.
Makes sense. And speaking of how things work, what about the work environment itself? When I picture a crime journalist, I'm thinking bustling newsrooms, maybe a stakeout here and there. What's it really like?
Well, you're not far off.
Okay.
We do spend our fair share of time in those classic newsrooms you mentioned, but you'll also find us in courtrooms, police stations, and, occasionally even at crime scenes.
Wow. Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. But I gotta ask, what about the less glamorous side, the stuff we don't usually see on TV?
Right. Well, it's important to be realistic about that side of things. You're dealing with sensitive situations, often working under tight deadlines. One day you might be with a family who's just experienced a loss, helping them tell their story. And the next, you're poring over evidence files. And some of it can be pretty tough to look at.
Right.
So it definitely takes a certain kind of resilience, emotionally and mentally,
Yeah.
to handle the ups and downs.
I can only imagine. Early in my career, I remember covering this heartbreaking story about a family who lost everything in a fire. I was so new to it all. And trying to remain objective while talking to them, getting the facts straight.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. But over time, you learn to compartmentalize a bit, to separate the emotions from the task you have to do.
It's a skill.
It is definitely a skill you hone over time.
Absolutely. And you touched on a crucial point. Learning to navigate those intense emotions, that's key.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, there's nothing quite like seeing your work actually make a difference, a tangible difference in the world.
Right.
Exposing corruption, helping set things right. Those are the moments that make all those tough days worth it.
Absolutely. So for someone out there who's still completely hooked on this idea of becoming a crime journalist, what skills are just non-negotiable? The RoleCatcher guide mentions communication, of course, 66% speaking and 63% writing, according to them. And that makes sense. You've got to be able to tell those stories in a way that grabs people and gives them the facts.
Oh, without a doubt. Storytelling, it's everything. But it goes deeper than just putting words together, right?
Right.
Think back to that hit and run case you mentioned earlier. That journalist, they didn't just trip over that clue, did they? No way.
Yeah.
They were actively looking at the information, analyzing it, questioning each little detail.
Right.
And that's critical thinking in action. The guide lists that as 58% essential. Because sometimes you got to be the one to connect those dots that everyone else is missing.
Yeah, it's like they say, right? The devil's in the details. But in this job, those details, they can make or break a whole case, or at least how the story gets told.
Exactly.
Mm.
And we can't forget about active listening either.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Think about how crucial those interviews are. You might be talking to a witness who's gone through something really traumatic, or a family desperately wanting justice for someone they've lost.
Wow. Yeah.
You need to be able to earn their trust, really understand what they're saying, and sometimes pick up on what they aren't saying too.
Right. It's like you're a journalist, yeah, but you're also a human being connecting with another person going through something really intense.
Exactly.
But even with all the empathy in the world, you still need that rock solid understanding of the law, right? The guide mentions criminal law, court procedures, even things like journalistic ethics.
100%.
Yeah.
Because without that knowledge, you're basically walking blindfolded through a minefield. You know,
Yeah.
you could easily misinterpret legal jargon, accidentally reveal something sensitive that jeopardizes a whole case.
Right.
Or, worst case scenario, you end up on the wrong side of the law yourself.
It's not good. It's not just about getting the scoop first. It's about getting it right, ethically. And speaking of things that are changing, the guide mentions digital forensics. I bet that's become a whole other beast with how much technology is involved in everything these days, huh?
Oh, absolutely. It's practically its own specialty now.
Wow.
You've got online evidence, social media trails, even things like cryptocurrency transactions. It's all intertwined with how crime gets reported now.
Wow.
And the thing is, it's constantly evolving. What's cutting edge today is old news tomorrow, you know?
Right. So continuous learning in this field, that's got to be essential.
Nonstop. You can't ever really master it all, but you can at least try to stay one step ahead.
Exactly, exactly. So let's say someone listening, they're ready to dive headfirst into this world. What's their best bet for getting a foot in the door? Because it's a competitive field, right?
Oh, no doubt. It's
Yeah.
tough. But here's the thing. Passion, it shines through. Don't just say you want to be a crime journalist, show it.
I like that.
Build a portfolio that screams, this is who I am, and this is what I can do.
Okay, love it. So are we talking internships, freelance pieces, maybe even starting a blog or a podcast about local crime?
You got it. Those are all great ways to start. And never underestimate good old-fashioned networking either.
Right.
Go to industry events, connect with reporters you admire, even reach out to local law enforcement or legal professionals.
Yeah.
You never know where your next big lead or even a mentorship opportunity might come from.
Speaking of leads, this is where I think a tool like RoleCatcher can be super valuable.
Oh, for sure.
Their platform is like, I don't know, almost like a secret weapon when it comes to figuring out this whole job market thing.
Totally agree. Their resources are top-notch, especially for folks just starting their careers.
Right. Like their career guides, they give such a deep dive, no pun intended, into different paths, including crime journalism. And it's not just, here's what the job description says. It really gets into the daily grind, the challenges, the high points, the whole picture.
Yeah, and their skill guides are super helpful for figuring out where your knowledge gaps might be.
Yeah.
Like maybe you need a refresher on legal terms or want to learn more about some specific investigative techniques. RoleCatcher points you in the right direction.
Totally, totally. And then their interview guides, those are pure gold, especially the AI-powered feedback.
I've heard amazing things about that.
It's like having a personal coach in your corner, helping you nail those answers and make a killer first impression.
In a field this competitive, confidence is huge. Knowing you're prepared for those tough questions, that can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And even beyond just the interview stuff, I think one of the coolest things RoleCatcher does is help you really understand what employers are looking for in the first place. Because let's be real, applying for jobs, sometimes it feels like you're just throwing stuff at a wall and hoping something sticks,
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
You can spend hours on a cover letter trying to make your experience sound amazing and unique.
Right.
And then it feels like it just disappears into a black hole. It's
Yeah.
easy to feel lost in the shuffle.
Totally. But with RoleCatcher, you're not just applying blindly. It's more like you're coming in with a strategy.
Right.
You're using their insights to really grasp what those employers are after, tailoring your application so it actually stands out.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, like having a cheat sheet for the whole job market.
I like that. And in a field as crazy competitive as crime journalism, that kind of edge can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about being a good writer, it's about being smart about how you approach the whole thing.
So true. Well, I feel like we have really dug deep today, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked about the grit it takes to make it as a crime journalist, the resilience you need, the pure dedication. But we also got to talk about the impact, those times when your work exposes injustice, when you're the one giving a voice to people who desperately need it.
It's a career that demands a lot from you. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that. But the rewards, they're huge. It's like having a front row seat to history as it unfolds. And sometimes you even get to be a part of shaping that history.
Absolutely. So, for our listeners out there, the ones who've been with us every step of the way, here's what I'll leave you with. If you've got that fire in your belly, that drive to uncover the hidden stories, the ones that really matter,
Yeah.
then maybe, just maybe, crime journalism is your calling.
And if you decide to answer that call, just remember everything we've talked about today. Hone your skills, build your network, and never ever stop learning. The world of crime journalism, it never sits still.
Right, right.
But at its core, it's about seeking truth and fighting for justice. That never gets old.
Beautifully said. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. It's been a true pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine, really.
And to everyone listening, thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and keep searching for those stories that need to be told.